It's great to be back with you all for today's symposium. It's also my true pleasure to be your moderator and for our opening keynote with Roen Higgins called Off the Shelf, Curating a Safe and Engaging Experience for All. Now, I had the opportunity to be part of a session Roen presented with one of the schools I work with here in the Western Quebec School Board, and I was swept up and away. I was torn the whole time between wanting to write notes and capture every moment on paper at the same time as wanting to just listen and float through the ideas and the optimism and the energy coming from my computer screen. I left that session feeling really inspired and energized, and I knew her approach would be a rooted and thoughtful way to start our work today. So let's jump into creating a community of belonging. This session is being recorded, so if you don't wish to appear on any video, please take a moment to turn your camera off. The chat is enabled, and Roen will use it throughout the session to interact with you, so please listen for those cues from her as we go. Roen Higgins, a special education technician for 22 years, a poet, a life coach, an artist, a community events coordinator. Welcome, and thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. As you heard, of course, you heard my name, Roen Higgins, but just that you understand where I'm coming from, I have to just come from a place of gratitude, first and foremost, to be in a space with those of you who I'm going to call magicians. We'll get to that. But yes, just with my experience to just really be able to be here. I just recently resigned from the EMSB of 22 years. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I get to be in amazing spaces like this, where I believe that I can bridge my creativity, my lens of compassion and community care, and of course, my love for creative literacy. And that is why I believe I'm here. And of course, because of the invitation from Erin. So thank you again. I'm going to jump right into it and give you a little background of what I do and why I do what I do. All right. So, can everyone tell me, by the way, I'm about engagement. Yes, I'm an educator, but I'm a special education technician. So I work with kids with intellectual, developmental, psychosocial needs, and I was all about having fun. So we're starting the day. For those of us who are drinking our coffee, I'm drinking some hot chocolate with a little shot of turmeric, if you know what I mean. We want to keep it lively and keep it engaging, because you are the ones who are really truly in the space of the library. I'll get to my interaction soon. So everyone recognizes these, right? Because most of us are very young, but some of us recognize these, right? The library card. To me, this is it was just an image. It was a reminder that I came into the library space to come in, to find a book, and to check out. And unfortunately, even though things have changed and time has passed, the library seems a space where people are checking out. It's a space that people viewed in media. You might see it was a space for book lovers or nerds, or a space that I only went to when I had to meet my group in university, or for some people, it's an escape. And these things are not all bad, but the stereotypes around it, stick with many people. What is a library space? Can you tell me in the chat, what is the space for? What does it mean to be in a space of a library? Or what is it for? What is the purpose? So drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear what you believe, because I think this is key, the different answers that are about to come out. So go ahead in the chat. What is the library space for? Safe space, gathering space, community, place of discovery. Yes, place of comfort, access and connection, encounter with different cultures, ideas, living space. Okay, so we've definitely moved from the archive of what people think the library is, books. All right. Thank you. Place of comfort, access, and familiarity. Okay. Thank you for sharing. A hub for the school. Yes, access to information and stories. Well, I definitely believe the library should be a place for people, for individuals, for children, for youth, for teachers, all educators, to be able to find a place where they can discover themselves. Like someone said, I'm sure I saw a place of discovery, a place to find new games. Yes, to study, read, think, hang out. And a place where we can discover the world beyond, for those who have never traveled. I once heard that a library is a poor man's university. And I remember hearing that, I was like, oh, it just made me cringe. But if that is the case, that people believe, why wait for university? Should that university be accessible from the time a child is in daycare, primary school, where they have access for all information, where that information is free, where they can have a space to study, read, think, hang out. But what else? Yes, and I've seen games where they have access to games, or it's a chess club. But what else can this library space be? What else can the memory be for a young person? So as you see this image, and in the spirit of Black History Month, I'm presently on a tour called the Know Your Roots Tour. And the reason why I'm sharing this image is because many times during certain themes or holidays, you walk into Indigo in a space and you'll see, okay, let's put up Black history books because it's Black history. Oh, well, it's Valentine's Day. Let's put up these books for, about love, and let's put up pink hearts and red hearts. And it's really cool to really create a moment based on a theme or an experience that you want people to connect with. Oh, it's a holiday, it's St. Patty's. Let's have these books about Ireland. But what if we went beyond? So I'm showing you this image here. These are images of griots. Many years ago, literally 2 decades ago, I remember going into a space at McGill University, and going on stage, and it was a variety show. I was asked to jump on stage for a free prize. Who loves free things here? I love free 99. Anything free 99 plus Quebec tax, I'm down for it, okay? Give it to me. I ran on stage and they were like, you have to sing. For those of us who are librarians, educators, we use our chords all the time, especially when we change our voice when we're reading stories. And I had a lot of nodules on my chords, because when we do that, we're actually creating a lot of friction. So my chords were short, and I was like, I'm not about to sing and embarrass myself. So in that moment, I started to just rap. Can't rap Christmas gifts for my life, but I can't rap either. But all of a sudden, I was doing what I never thought I could do, which was poetry. And I started to express stories of the conflict in my life, being in foster care, being called an at-risk youth, being told I wouldn't make it, being told I'll be just like my mother, who has till presently schizophrenia. And there I was on stage, that person that always said, I'm fine. How many of you, ever somebody asks you how you're doing and you're not fine, and then you say, I'm fine. That was my whole life. That is what we call mass depression, where you don't even realize that you're going through something and you've learned to wear that mask so long. And I, in that moment, no longer was a person that was smiling. The ADHD kid that was always bouncing around, the class clown, my smile left me on that stage. And I started speaking about my history, about who I am, and dealing with this frustration and conflict of mental health around me. I came off stage and these individuals were like, oh man, you're a griot. A who? Griot? No, no, a griot. Like, I'm thinking grits, food. I had no idea what they were speaking about. And that is when I started learning about the African griots. African griots were those who were the holders of information. They were from West Africa, Mali. And in the 13th century, maybe, they would just come together and bridge people, no matter what side they were on. They were the keepers of genealogy, of marriages, of funerals. They retained this information, and they could be women and men. And believe it or not, when they spoke, people listened, these storytellers, these musicians, and they would just have everyone's attention. And of course, as before, there was archives or libraries or Googles or encyclopedia. And what's beautiful is they would entertain people with these stories. And that's when I learned that I'm a griot. And this had so much meaning to me that I keep it to this day. But most importantly, when a griot showed up in a space where people gathered together, they gathered unified people together to gather in peace, a community of peace. That is what a library to me should be, not just peace as in silence, right? But you can make noise and just claiming that space as yours, a space of peace. And I'm going to tell you why that's so much more important to me, because for those of you who didn't get that, I, as an educator, I, as a special care counselor, have seen libraries used in different ways that I will explore. So when I go on my tour, when I speak to young people, I realize that identity is a key thing. And part of our identity is our history. Many young people do not know their history. They don't know their stories. And when I think of being an educator for 22 years, being in different classes and schools, and then at the time that I was in school, I never learned my own history. So I started speaking about Black history during Black History Month. And then I switched it because first of all, Black History Month, what was it? The impression of people in the United States, right? There was these individuals that we knew, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, Madam C.J. Walker, Malcolm X, okay. But what about Canadian Black history, I asked myself. So I started doing that. And now I can go into school and say Viola, and even 5-year-olds can say Desmond. We've come a long way with information, and it's a beautiful thing. But then I'm like, okay, let's peel back from that as well. So what my tour is now about knowing your roots is inspiring every child to get to know who they are and have a lens of compassion for others around them. But how can we curate that? When I was a child and I saw books, there was no representation. Yes, we've come a long way. We can turn left and right and on shelves, we can explore and learn about different cultures and experiences and traditions and heritage. Beautiful. But what about in their classes? What are we teaching them as teachers? And now we come into the library spaces. And how can they actually have a desire to want to know who they are? And so this is a quote that I wrote. Keep looking into your history because that's the path that will forge our next pages. They are the ones who's going to leave a legacy. What's going to invite them? Which space will be inviting to them for want to know their stories? Because in classes in history, when I'll ask you, in Quebec history, what do they learn? In world history, what have we learned and what are we still learning? No one is learning about their identity. No one is learning about their truth and their roots. Because even those of us who are first generation, third generation, or maybe immigrants ourselves, when we speak about our stories or hear about our stories, usually it was about the hardship. My family, I call myself a jerk poutine, okay? So jerk chicken from Jamaica and poutine because I'm a born Quebecer, right? So all that spice added to the cheese, gravy, and fries, trust me, there's stories there, but I did not know them. How do I get the opportunity to learn my story? I had to explore those pages for myself. In the 50s and 60s, they had what we call the domestic scheme, where Canadian government promised these women, if you come over here to Canada, you will have all of this and all of that, but filled in the labor needs. And that's how my family arrived here. I did not learn that from my family. They never even spoke about it. And that is usually the case for every child. That is usually the case for most of us. And if you ask a child what they know about their heritage, I kid you not, I do this from elementary to university. Who knows the history of Italy? Without fail, can anybody in the chat tell me what you think they say? What are the top 3 things you think they say when I say, what do you know about your history for Italians? Jump in the chat. Let's just have some fun here. What do you think they say they know about their history for Italy? Not all at once, y'all. Yes, keep going. Spaghetti, pizza. Artists is a first. No, Roman Empire would be great. Mussolini would be great. Popes would be great. No. Pizza, spaghetti in that order. And then they even speak about mafia. I love y'all. I wish I was in the same space right now. Yes, pasta, pizza, spaghetti in that order. And then I'll get brands like Kappa, Invicta, and of course, soccer. So when I speak about my own history, Black history was started, Negro history week was started in the 50s, right? Because Carter G. Woodson believed that people need to know that our history came beyond slavery. But then when I really started to look at every child that I work with, every student that I work with, every adolescent and emerging adult, they did not know their history. But the question is, how many of us actually know our own stories? As librarians, you are the keeper of information. You are the holders of something so sacred. And we do not even know our stories. So how can we start to help them be inspired to do that? Well, first, we need to connect with our own stories before we connect with stories of others. So here's a little image from Dawson Creek. I don't know if any of y'all are too young for this. I get it. But, you know, I always found it funny, and I looked for this because I remember that many libraries became a space for detentions, became a space where kids started to correlate with punishment. And I'm saying became. I'm thinking past tense, but you know what? As a behavior tech, I know we have different titles in some schools, we were asked to have detention, or can you have, just have some kids, just keep them over there to do their exams. So this became a space where it should be safe. And here they are doing their exams, and they related it to having detention. And in this Dawson Creek episode, it's a Saturday detention. So they would leave home to come and have detention in the library. And I bring this because I think it's so important that, again, the stereotypes and the beliefs that people have attached to a library, or the mood or the energy, we have to be so mindful. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go as far to say that we need to be territorial. I'm going to say it. Be territorial, unapologetically territorial, because this study hall, once upon study hall, libraries, a place of punishment, a place of detention, should be a sacred space, should be a space where we know that it's a shared, and yes, it could be connected. Many libraries are connected to the public, right? It might be open to the community. But even if it's shared with outsiders, if you will, and not just students from the school, how can we make this space sacred, right? How can it be a space where people would want to be there? Well, I want you to think of the term sacred, right? When I think of the word sacred, we think of a holy space, a temple, right? We think of a space that is a place of worship, whether that is a mosque, a church, right? A synagogue. What is that? But really, a space that is sacred is a place where we believe worthy of respect. So yeah, I'm not telling you to be, belligerent and go off on your principal when they said, oh, we're just going to use the library for, we're just looking for a room. It's always become that extra space where we just send kids off sometimes. Maybe not your school, but the schools I've been. And in 22 years, I've been to 18. And that is real talk, where I felt the space was not seen as all of the things that you said, a place for studying, beyond the games, beyond these places. How can it be an engaging learning space? So when I think of a library, I think of a space of belonging, safe space, community, nurturing, free to explore who they are, their identity, and the culture and traditions and heritage of others, and to be a bridge, to be innovative. Think of technology. And I realize that since we have STEAM programs and science labs, many times people separate the two. But I believe that libraries should really be innovative and be a reflection of their present world, which is tech as well. And of course, their stories. So I say this because when I think of, as an educator and with a background in psychology and learning, doing social experiments, when you're looking and engaging with young people, how do they engage with others? They don't explore the world like us. You might see little kids in kindergarten, how do they connect with the world? And then you see them in grade 5, they get a little more like inward and introverted and may not be as, me. It starts to change. And if you notice, the ones who are really continuously engaging and might just blurt out what they have to say are lovely students on the spectrum. And I say this because they have this, they're uninhibited. They're going to say what they have to say. And it's like, well, I remember the time that, and they start to spill their stories. But the older our students are getting, there's this feeling that they don't want to share anymore. They don't want to explore. And the things that pull them in is other identities, if you will. That's what they want to emulate, the TikTok, the influential things. But how can a librarian be the influence? How can we be the provider of literacy? Want them to be part of community and society? How can we create a space where they feel free to explore without being graded or judged? And that's why I feel that we have to be mindful when the space is like, oh, he got suspended and now he's back, let him do the exam in the library. And I'm not saying it cannot happen, but it should not be the forefront of what that space is used for. A judge-free space, a zone where they're not graded, where they can be educated and survive and thrive in this world. So I'm coming to the most important part. I believe librarians are curators. Can anyone tell me what a curator is? Yes, we're students every day. We are always learning, but I love to know where your mind is at. What is a curator, or who is a curator? What is the role of a curator? A focused collector. Yes, Brandy, with a last name sounding like mine. Hello. Yes, I'm biased. Anyone else? Thank you. What is a curator? Someone who preserves. Yes, almost like the griots, preserving information. And one more. Can I get one more? A finder, holder of keys of knowledge, person who collects. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, exactly. So when you go to a museum, when you go into a space where curators, they're collectors. But they don't just pick up anything. They just don't like, oh, well, this looks great. Let me just throw it on the shelf, right? And that's what I believe a library is going to select. That's right, for a specific purpose and conserve the conservator. Thank you. And I believe that when you're organizing this information, when you're bringing this information together as a collector, there's someone in mind. They choose what belongs in the space. So if you choose what belongs in the space, that is why you need to be unapologetic and almost be like a gatekeeper. It's like, no. Everyone belongs here, but certain things will not happen here. And I think if we create that culture, we will be so much further in what we remember. As you saw the library card, for me, when I saw library spaces, I walked in, I remember it was dusty, it was very moldy, there was a bunch of books that the binding was falling apart. Yes, it was the beautiful wood, but shelves were so high, it was not accessible. Information was not attainable. It was unreachable. And we had to ask, and you had to get that little, the ladder stairs, I don't know how you call it, and it was slide on wheels, and someone had to get it for you. How can we make information attractive, attainable, right? For this community, this safe gathering space that a curator will curate, I believe we need to include our five senses, that they remember, that it becomes a memorable community, a place where they will look not just to escape, but to explore, all right? So I love this quote by John Burroughs, where he says, knowledge without love will not stick, but if love comes first, knowledge is sure to follow. And I believe that is such a beautiful quote, because we say that we're keepers of knowledge, you're collectors of knowledge, right? But what about love? What if that child would feel that space of love? What if that community member, or that even the educator that comes in, can not just relax, oh, it's the library time, this is my spare. Okay, they're gonna read a story and let me just check on my phone. Let's keep it 100, I'm an educator too, so, I remember, right? How can we make them want to actually be inspired to be part of the experience as an educator? And they're co-creating with you. They're co-curating with you. And let's go even further, that a young person will come in and want to co-create themselves. So a little backstory, like I said, I was labeled as an at-risk youth. I was told by teachers that I'd be dead at 16. I was in foster care, home to home. And by the time, right before I graduated high school, I was homeless and I was kicked out of school. Thankfully, even then, I believed in advocating for myself. And I went and I said, listen, I show up to school every day. And by the way, I should let you know, I was kicked out because I did not have a legal address. Forgot to mention that. By law, you have to have a legal address. And I fought my way back in school. And the reason why school was important for me is because it was my safe space. It was the only thing that was consistent in my life. And it was a place where I got to connect with my peers. So if a young person if you think about why young people go into gangs, why kids go into groups and cliques, it's the same reason why we do. It's a sense of belonging. How can we be curators of a space if we're not thinking of these things? All right, speaking of spaces, and this is where I need your interaction, y'all. Okay, this or that. So there's a hip hop song back in the days like, you can get with this or you can get with that. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because I want you to think of, which one do you want to get with? Left or right? Just go in the chat, left or right. Which space do you want to engage in? And I'm not here pushing brands. I'm not a brand pusher. They didn't pay me yet. Oh, right. Obviously, I love that. Obviously, right. Okay, can you tell me in the chat why? Why is the right space the right place to be? Community. Okay. Ambiance. Thank you. Interaction, lighting, warm, cozy, right? More welcoming, warm. Okay. So as you're, keep it coming. I love to see the chat going. If you look on the left, do those lights look familiar to you? Yeah, right. I don't know about you. And I think of, when working, it was like 1998, I was learning in psychology with a lot of these students with autism and being mindful of the lights that we have. School lights. Yes, Tim Hortons. Yes, I love the LOLs. Right. Here are these lights. And, we don't realize how these lights actually stress all of us. We recognize how it bothers, it triggers kids who are on the spectrum, but those lights are not healthy for us. And they're in every school. Tell me I'm wrong. There should be some burned out light bulbs. Yes. And the flickering lights is even worse. These lights are just pull our heads. And sometimes for those of you who have migraines and headaches and you don't know why, the light has an effect on our learning, on our experience, on our mood. So yes, someone already put it down there. Okay, so since someone already said Tim Hortons on the left, which space is on the right? Not pushing brand, y'all, but tell me which space is on the right. Starbucks. Okay, can anyone tell me why Starbucks is the space that you chose? Anyone? Why did we choose this local coffee shop? Thank you. Why do you think? Well-designed, feels like a hug. Yes, yes. Anything else? Right? Socialized, plants, cozy, creative, warm. Remember these words, y'all. Ambiance, comfort, wants you to stay. The wood, okay. More recent, inviting. Thank you, yes. All right. It's designed to make us feel comfortable. I love that. Yes, inviting. Color scheme. Okay, come on. I think I need to leave. I'm going to exit the chat. That's exactly it. This is pretty much what the presentation's about. It's a place you can work in by yourself if need be. You won't feel like you're imposing. Oh my goodness. Earth tones. So let me just get right into it. So the beautiful thing of Starbucks, which is, let's be real, y'all. Their drinks ain't not that, yeah, their drinks are interesting. And if you're sponsored by Starbucks, I apologize. Okay, their drinks are not that great. Let's be real. However, as you said, the artwork, the greenery, the space, the tone. I remember there was a Harvey's in LaSalle. I'm from Montreal, by the way. And I remember when they closed this, it was a Burger King. Many years ago, they closed it down and the Starbucks opened. I have never been to that Burger King in my life. And as soon as that Starbucks opened, it was my meeting place away from home. And just that you know, they target a certain class. Okay, they target a middle to upper class. They make sure that people want to go there every day, and they call it the third place, a bridge between home and school, a bridge between home and work. Why they want you to come and invite you to come and sip, take a while, and sit back, but feel enough energy to be motivated, to continue, to be invited, right? So this third place is supposed to appeal to a certain audience. And I found it so interesting that when I first went to Starbucks, I think of the lights. There were actually these wooden lights that you probably now find on Etsy, and the aesthetics was a lot of wood. Anyone knows what biophilic means? I see a lot of your backgrounds and people who have that experience happening. Can anyone say what biophilic means? What does it mean? Biophilic. If one person gets it, this is the $1 million question of the hour. What does that mean? Biophilic, organic, okay? Right? Has anybody ever been to a cafe or restaurants now, and even maybe certain subways in tune with nature? That's right, loves life. When you see these places and they have moss all over, and people are paying a lot of money for this moss, which probably 10 years ago, we would probably think was trash, right? You're like, what is this? Weird green balls on my table, right? And that's what it is. It's something to do with plants or life, bio, right? To connect people to nature. And this is what's been really innovative now. So if you look at the picture image on the left, this is a Starbucks in New York City. And many cities have Starbucks now that are replicating what the environment. So now this is replicating Penn State in New York City. So you kind of feel the tracks going on top, right? And you will see that in many places. If you go to a Starbucks in Mexico, it feels like a beachside space, and it's open and it's without walls. I want you to keep that in mind. I love this. Moss reminds me of my childhood camping, such happy memories. Exactly. Connect with nature. And on the right, you see this, again, wood. The lighting is minimal. It's not so bright. It's not taking away from the experience of the room. Why am I mentioning this? The third place, I thought that was so genius in their marketing. And when they're curating spaces, they're thinking of how can we be that third place? So of course, I'm not saying that you need to create home, but we don't want it to feel like the classroom. We don't want it to feel that people could just dump people in and like, it just doesn't have the detention there because the extra space. We need to be curators of a space that feels safe, engaging, accessible. Here's another quote that I really love. Childhood has its own way of seeing, thinking, and feeling, and nothing is more foolish than to try to substitute ours for theirs. So the way these young people, these children, our teens, right, they're developing. How they see the world and think and experience is very different, right? I also, as educators, many of us have learned about our multiple intelligence, how we learn, how we see. I'm very visual, so grow up in a Caribbean home, they do not, many of them, as you know, for those of you who may be older, have, your aging parents. And when they taught you about recipes, it was like just a little bit of that and a pinch of this and a pinch of that. And you're like, come again, right? Can you help me out here? And they would be like, well, I just put this and that. And you're like, I want the recipe. And you try to replicate it even when they tell you. But there's just something, again, bringing back the joy and the love and the 5 senses. It's experiential. So every library, each and every one of you, if I go into the space that you've curated so far, or maybe you just started and you just came in, you're like, oh my gosh, they just left books from like the day the school opened. And you're just overwhelmed with a lot of junk. I've seen that. I've cried when I've seen books just being thrown away, no one to go through it. And I know it's a lot of work. So don't get me wrong. But that's what we're going to speak about, the curating and the co-creating of the space. So going back to that child, that sometimes we're trying to create the space that we feel they need. But what would happen if we thought of their experience with nature, a component on how they judge the world, how they view the world? They're tactile. We might see this, I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful design. This blue goes nice with the wooden. They're not feeling that. They want to touch. How does it feel? It's squishy ball, a feather, its texture. It is their 5 senses. It is not just us who see things as a background. Starbucks is the background. Them, it is the light and things that we just take for granted, and it's secondary. Think of a child coming into a new space. Wow, this is beautiful, right? It's experiential. And I want us to keep that in mind, that children don't judge nature by the aesthetics, but how they interact with it. So, of course, I'm coming with my background, y'all. I always think of whatever I am doing, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Of course, we know the base, physiological needs, right? What is necessary to stay alive and to survive. And then it's safety. And actually, that's where I was going to go with this presentation. How can we create a safe space with the resources and that they feel well and that they can, really tap into to who they want to be and connect with others. But then I thought of, wait a minute, love and belonging. I mean, that is what we all aspire. Anywhere we go, we want to belong. And that is why young people will have their cliques and they will join different organizations that are not healthy, right? That is why peer pressure, because I want to belong. And even though this is not my value, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to belong. How can we create that space that they don't feel like it's just a place for games or just like, oh, it's for the chess club. It's for lunchtime activities. Oh, I don't do that. I'd rather hang outside. What is outside? Their peers. What are their peers doing that is so attractive? They're looking for an escape. They want to do something that's fresh and new. And that is why, as curators, we have to make sure that it's engaging. And I thought that's where my presentation was going to go. And I was like, wait a minute, esteem. Listen, man, we're almost at top of self-actualization, which many of us are still trying to get to in our lives. Let's be real. I don't know how many of you are there, but I am definitely, at that tip of that iceberg. But with esteem, imagine as we are designing that we kept this in mind, right? So not just keeping the space that they feel that you're in direct contact with nature, which we'll get into, but we're encouraging innovation. We're encouraging creativity and problem solving. But what if they felt that in a space they felt respected, that they can achieve, that they will just not respect for themselves, others, and their environment? Like I tell young people, I say respect for self, others, and your space. Kids will see something, can you pick up that garbage? It's not mine, I didn't put it there. Is it any different than teachers? You're like, excuse me, you use the space and you left garbage, and they're like, oh, the caretaker was it doesn't change with age. Let's be real. I see some spirit hands, yes. How can we get people to respect the space? How can they be respecters if we're not gatekeepers of that space to be respected? A space that they can feel that they can achieve. Well, I'll get to that. So keep that in mind. Maslow's hierarchy needs in everything that you do, and for yourself. Do you feel respected? Do you feel that your space is safe? Because this is your working space. Those students might come for a period, a block. Teachers might come when they need it, a period, a block, and might check out, right? But you're in there, that space. And some of you are not just in one school, you're in more than one space. So that space shifts. It's like a shifting tide, the ebb and flow, and you're like, what am I going to walk into? I haven't been in this building for 2 days. Oh, of course they had a movie night and left popcorn on the floor, right? Cannot imagine what you all experience. But this is what's important to keep in mind. How to make it a space of belonging, how to make it safe. So when I was speaking about the biophilic design in spaces, listen, I know you might not have that $2,000 to make a moss wall, right? But it might be just a color. It might just be an image. It might be just on the wall. It might be just that one backdrop of just green. And again, bring in those little co-creators, bring in those for promise youth. Why am I saying for promise? Like I said, I was labeled an at-risk youth. And when I was hired and when I went to school, we are taught at-risk youth. But are they not all at risk? Are we not all at risk to slide into depression, to have a breakup, to go through a divorce, to have a death in our family? Many of us are in sandwich generation, maybe even older, taking care of our kids or our elders. We are all going through something and at risk of some kind of breakdown or health issue. But how can we make sure that we're curators of our daily experience? You know what? It's our surroundings. We have that much control of our space. I don't know about you. My desk had to be clear before I started this presentation. I make sure I have a little hot chocolate. I have feathers around me. I have essential oils going in my diffuser. I am very intentional about how my space feels. And as a special care counselor, when I had kids in my room, as a behavior tech, we had the bubble tubes going. We had the bean bags and all these different things. And of course, every school is not the same. Not every school has the same budget. Not every principal knows how to tap into the budget, even the budget exists. Not everyone knows there's grants out there. So what can you do with a minimal budget to create a space that is engaging, inviting, just the lighting is just open, and they will feel that they can learn beyond the walls of the library. So going back to that card, the library card, the vintage library card, where we just stamped a date. I don't know about you, some of you, anyone here still have a vintage library card because you never returned that book from your childhood days? Yes, see some, many hands. I guess you were collectors of information and books then too. It's not stealing, I promise. All right, so yes, many of us have done that where we brought home books, but when I look back at these cards, there's only one, two maybe, you see your fellow students' names, even people that you know later, you said, oh my gosh, is this you? There's just something familiar about this card. Not that just you're a key, it's not just a key to information, but there's something nostalgic. There's a memory to taking out a certain book. It's connected to a certain time. And even though we don't want our libraries to look like 1965, and you're probably dying for a budget to get it to move from 1980 with the manila walls and the little archive books. I've seen those boxes, I don't know what you call it, where you put the cards. But this apple wood, it's cool. but it has to feel like it has moved with time. It has to reflect their present world, but make sure that they feel like they're home. So images, bean bags, the color of the carpet, the smell, because sometimes I've been to places like, why does this library, my memory is a smell. Maybe your memory of like going to grandma's house could be mothballs or her freshly baked cookies. We want this library to be that good memory. What can we do, even without a budget, to create that space? I want to hear in the chat, what can we do to create a safe space that's innovative and curated to learn, that's experiential? What can we do? What's something that we could do? Involve the community. Come on, yes. Come on, yes, we can involve the community. What else? I'd also drop some gems there. It's you know what? Finding out those grants that exist. There are grants and your principal may not know about them. It is for you as a curator of information to say, hey, this exists. There's a grant. You might have to write that grant. There are parents who will volunteer and support you. There are teachers who are inspired by this, and do not do it by yourself. I can only imagine how overwhelming it is, especially when you're not in one school. Donations, fundraisers, bring the joy. All right. Involve everyone involved. Yes, to be part of the planning. Thank you. All participants should be involved, including students. And I'm going to bring that back to the for-promise students. Those ones that are kicked out of the classes. I'll tell you, one thing I've learned in 22 years and even before, because I worked in day camps and as an animator, the students that are the most hyperactive, have a hard time sitting still, those are the kids to go for. Obviously not the ones that are coming and destroy and then it becomes another job, but I mean those who are just really antsy and have a lot of ideas. You give them something to do. Give them something to do in the library, to take out the recycling, to take it to move books, to help shelve it with you. You would be amazed at what they're capable of. A Lego wall, beautiful. You know what else? Have you ever seen all those vintage wall art where people take vintage books and do this folding and create this art? They look like diamonds. People actually do. Listen, many of us, I will speak for the schools who are hoarders. I was in beautiful hoarder schools. I love the hoarder schools because I found gems. They're like, this is garbage. I'm like, what? Okay. I became a collector. Those books that they're throwing away or they're sitting there, you can have students come in, have a teacher be part of it and do folding, maybe the art teacher, maybe an English teacher, and do folding art with those books where they actually just really pop off the walls. Things like that, you do not need a budget. Or if your school is already clean and they actually got rid of everything, go to those places. People are looking to give away books all the time. Use your social media. Hey, we're looking for anybody that's giving away a beanbag. Okay, obviously the ones that you can wipe off and sterilize because we're not into pandemics. Okay, making them feel part of something in the school builds self-confidence and a sense of belonging. Yes. Sitting with them and chatting. Exactly. You know what I love about stereotypes of librarians, but I love some of the stereotypes, especially the quirky glasses with the bead chains. You remember that? But it's funny, when I do meet librarians, some of them have these my favorite glasses, my favorite frames come from these librarians, right? The ones that look like little spectacles, that they kind of come like a cat eye. But however, unfortunately, that stereotype is that librarian was just like, okay, go to that aisle, it's over there. And it was this disconnect. So I love that Judith said to sit with them and chat. Not just to have that conversation with the kid who loves books and has that connection, but that they see you more, the most important space and person in the building, because you are the holder of gems, of that magic, that are able to travel through the pages and through the words that you share. So here we have this library where you have this space where they feel like it's cozy, but it's light. And also, just think of that too. Like, I'm not a fan. I'm that educator that used to go to schools in the staff room, and I would never sit on the cloth couches. I used to also work in other institutions with group homes and detention spaces. And I've learned that couches, for me, it was like Carrie's cooties, because literally they'll be like, oh, by the way, there's been an outbreak of not bed bugs, scabies, like lice. And I was like, oh, 21 years old, imagine. Freaking out. So I just became very scornful and very like, ew. And I like everything to be able to wipe off. For those who are parents, understand the importance of that. And for those who are librarians, probably like, there are crumbs stuck in this fabric couch that was donated to us, right? Every single person wants couches. I'm like, nope. Exactly. But how can we create a lounge space that is also, that you can wipe, it's easy to clean, and it's not a headache for you, because we don't have time to walk with like, oh, Tide, I don't know, the spot removers and all that, right? It can be definitely hygienic, but still feel like a lounge space. So here's one of them, of course, state of the art. I'm not going to poke at your budget. I have no idea what you have, but we can all create spaces like this without a budget. Yes, it may not be carved out and look like, you might not have the egg chairs. We have leather couches. Yeah. There you go. They can take their shoes off. That's what it's about. How can we create that space that they will feel safe enough to draw their feet up? And again, a space where they won't be judged, and sit up straight and, put your feet down. They can just feel comfortable to totally be free to just dive in to the books. So keeping in mind that children explore spaces different than adults, let us bring in that co-creator. Your number one co-creator is the child, is the youth, it's the young person. And do it along with the teachers, because they might know their students best, and say, who do you believe can come in this space and help me create this safe space? In branding, and not to promote any brands here, but I'm going to go through this quickly. You see that there's brand psychology. Think of colors, the importance of colors and how it sets a tone for mood and emotions, right? Familiar brands that thing that might be sterile and very luxurious, it's usually silver, and things that are inviting and very like homey, and everybody knows at the top of their mouth. Okay, McDonald's, it's usually orange and yellow. Think of these things. Brand recognition, they use color. Not just consistency, they use color. So just to get away from the brands, I'll show you this really quickly. We have what we call brand psychology linked to mood. And I think green, if anything, eco-friendly, it's natural. And for those who caught that friendly is misspelled, it was not me who wrote it, okay? It is soothing, it is restful. Think of attraction, look at the orange, wealth, youthful, happiness, joy. Think of these colors when you're curating, even if it's a color of a cushion. Speaking of cushions, I want you to think of posters. I want you to think of these different images, right? And not just feel like the room that, oh, okay, this is what the childcare worker would have, or think of SEL, keeping their emotional learning in mind as well. Good vibes only, humor, maybe affirmations, right? Even I love the cushions that have the emotion wheel. That's something that I use as well. Stay bright, little quirky, fun, motivational images that they will take away. So, sorry, jump that one. I want to go right into this. Think like a proton and stay positive. Yes. I want you to think of this experience now as curators of bridging people into this space. Who is coming into this space, into this design space that we're speaking of, that will spark them to learn beyond the walls? How can we create this engaging experience? Yes, we said 5 cents. We're thinking of sending our messages, just like brands do, their brand messaging. If you can think of a space, you have all the money in the world, because somehow we think it's about money, but it's not. But you have all the money in the world to curate the space. You have the right people, the right team. You are not by yourself. Please tell me in the chat, what would this space look like? What would this space feel like? Okay, so I see. Show that you care space. Wow. I love that. I could see that being as a sign, Library is a place that shows that we care. Grandma's house, cozy, place with books. Walking into Narnia, okay, it'd feel like love. Come on now. Soothing, not overwhelming, welcoming, bright, lively. Not like an antiseptic area. Yes, please. No hospital feelings. Not that how that Timmy's place looked. It was very stoic, a cottage in the countryside under a tree or canopy, relaxing yet exciting. Yes. People sharing a meal. Okay. And to close, I would love to hear that if we're sparking learning beyond walls, we're creating an accessible space to all. And we're keeping in mind Let's go back to the librarian glasses with the beads, because of course many of us are very visual, so remember. And then feel those glasses. If we put on those glasses, that's going to give us better precision, better perspective, and us having a lens of compassion, thinking beyond ourselves when we're co-creating this space. We're not doing it by ourselves. Yes, we're curators, but we're co-creating with others. What should the space feel like? And what should the purpose of the space be? Remember, I'm a proud gatekeeper, y'all. I tell people I'm a gatekeeper. I share resources, I connect others, but when it comes to keeping people safe, I block it. Right? And I want the library to be that way, in the sense of like, yes, this is an open space for all, but you will respect this space for what it is. It is a sacred space. Yes, students should see themselves in this space. So, how many of you believe that you're storytellers? Show of hands for those of you on screen. And I want to thank you for that, for those who are engaging, for interacting, for those who I see your faces as well. I think it's so amazing and important, especially since the pandemic, that we can like not just feel like we're in Hollywood squares, but that we're in the same room. Thank you. So yes, I love the spirit hands. We got to do spirit hands. Yes. Thank you for showing your faces. So yes, just for this moment, if you can all come on camera, okay? Because this is what the library space is going to be. You saw the Starbucks? We don't want it to be the Tim Hortons where it was like, I'm in line, just give me my cappuccino and let me bounce, okay? Thank you, yes, yes. Awesome. So I want you to hear this. Storytellers. I remember walking into a space that showed that they care kind of space. Brought memories of my grandma's house, cozy, inviting, warm, a place full of books, feeling like a place of recipes with good home cooking. I remember walking into the space that felt like I was walking into Narnia. It felt like love, soothing, not overwhelming, but just a welcoming, bright and lively kind of love. A place that fostered socialization. It felt like that time that I traveled to that cottage, that countryside, like sitting under a tree or canopy, relaxing yet exciting. A space that once again whispered, "You are welcome here. Pull up a chair and relax." A place that felt like what was a community gathering space, a space of peace. A place where we can gather and share a meal unraveling through the words and pages, recipes of where I can explore and be. A place where we all feel like we can belong, a community, a place of stories and storytelling, a place where I can see me, inviting space where I can be respected and feel that I can be kind and others kind to me, an open access door to knowledge, stories, a place to feel safe, to explore, where there is no taboo subjects. Yes, a place to be me. Give yourself a round of applause. You are the authors of that beautiful poem. I just literally read it in order. And in a time and place where I cannot imagine what you might feel, and no matter what our beliefs are, but where you see in the United States of America, where our neighbors, where books are being taken off of shelves, my goodness. Basic stories from Anne Frank to Becoming with Michelle Obama, being removed off of shelves, stories of Martin Luther King, where it's not a safe space to read stories. Yes, be a gatekeeper when it comes to making sure your space stays sacred, but let it be a space where, like, I love how someone said that no subject is taboo, where they can learn who they are, that they can feel special in the skin that they're in, that they will learn and have the spark to go beyond walls. Each and every one of you are just those who are like matchsticks, creating sparks, creating that flame, and that you will be memorable beyond the stereotypes of the old school librarian with the dope, quirky glasses, which I'm looking for, by the way. Feel free to send me any recommendations. But I'm asking you that they will remember you, maybe not your name, but what you planted inside of each of them. You are curators, co-creators. You are the university not the poor man's university, but the first university that a child, a young person, and even us, I remember as an educator walking into libraries, and my librarians were like, that makes a school. And once I have a good principal, caretaker, and a librarian, let me tell you, my best recommendations, even as an adult, came from a librarian. So continue to do the work that you do and keep it unapologetic while you create a safe space. Claim this space as your own, that you are that curator for that young person who is looking at the world through fresh eyes. Continuously be innovative and be that space. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, thank you. If there's any hands, any questions? Well, I appreciate that. Well, that's what I do. I believe that I'm here to elevate when it comes to creative literacy, be a bridge as a poet, as a facilitator. I speak on mental health. These things are very important to me. And I believe that library can do just that, to elevate and inspire. Yes, go ahead, Laura.
Hi, I was just wondering, can you hear me?
Yes, hear you perfectly.
So I was just wondering how you would reconcile the need to have rules with the need to make your space welcoming and inviting, because I work in a senior high school and we do have rules. They can't come in with food. They can't bring in their school bags because they sneak in their food. Drugs, I'm afraid to say. They try to skip class, so they come to the library with their hall pass and say, I just want to look at a book. So, there's the rules that they have to come with a note. And I do have signs up showing that these are the rules. So right when they walk into the library, all of a sudden they're faced with, these are the rules. But then once they're in, of course, I have the board games and I try to do all of those other things, but it still feels hard to reconcile everything you were saying about making it such a wonderful, warm, welcoming, inviting space with those rules that they have to follow as well.
Thank you so much. That's a very important question. And I hope I do this justice with this answer. I'm a believer in rules. Setting the norms is key. And if you want to have the children, have the youth, the young person, those seniors come into the space and be curators of those rules. Like, okay, how do you think we could say this? Because they are the ones who, just like when we say, okay, what are the consequences? Kids will come up with the best consequences. They're the most thoughtful when it comes to that. And have them put it in their own handwriting. Let them be a part of that. Let it be part of the artwork, where they are the curators of, this is my space. Because they know if they have a bedroom, they don't want people borrowing their clothes and doing whatever they want with their space. And once they understand that, they respect it. Like, you set the norms. Of course, when I say they respect it, those who choose to, but it's okay to have that in an inviting space. It's like, okay, in this kitchen, we put down our cell phones. We put it in a box over here. Right? In this kitchen, we do not put our foot on the table. We wash our hands before we eat. And you know what? Because we want to dive into that good food, we're going to be respecters of that. And that is okay, because that is the library is actually, I believe, will actually teach young people to be citizens of this world, to be respecters of the different norms and values that are out there in every space that they go. As you travel one country, you don't shake with your right hand. You eat with this hand when you're sharing a meal. Okay, we eat with utensils. This, I believe, the norms are so important to implement in the library more than anywhere else, because that is a reflection of society. As I showed in that diagram, the belonging and the innovations, like, how can we reflect a reflection of the world at large and in the present day? So yes, definitely norms, set the norms. Yes, tidying up rule, yes. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, I see Nadu.
Gigi, yes. I feel that norms such as Laura was mentioning are very important to create a sense of respect for the space, because everybody abide by the same kind of rules to make sure that everybody can find their spot and it's safe for everyone. And it's just somebody taking hold of the show and making whatever in the library. I feel it's important to have some kind of rules. Like, we have rules when we go everywhere, so it's part of how do we behave in a library. Some of that has been lost during the pandemic with the little kids in elementary. So we have to rebuild that knowledge of how to behave in that library space. And well, that's my idea about that. But I know, and also to involve the kids in making those norms. Sometimes it might be a good idea, because they will, and they're usually stricter than we are. So that's a surprise.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, they are for some interesting reason. So have them be part, have your promise, have your for promise youth, that's children, adolescents, be the creators, the co-creators and the curators of the space. Thank you.
Wow. Rowan, thank you so much. I for one needed that this morning. I again feel I'm leaving a session with you feeling energized and inspired. And as we can see, the chat's just rolling through. It's about, I think, creating a space where we can be together, right? Where everyone can do what they're there to do together. And you've started us off in such a beautiful way. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I don't want to do this, but I need to move us on in the schedule. So Rowan, thank you so much. What a beautiful way to start the day. I want to say a big thank you to QSLiN, who is our captioner for this session. Thank you, QSLiN. I want to thank as well Julian Taylor for taking care of all of the technical aspects of this session. There is a quick break scheduled before we start the next session, which is the Caring Library, Removing Barriers to Create Belonging for All Students with Courtney Morrison. And we do encourage you to get up and move around a little. I'm just going to go have a dance party. I think I've got so much energy now. That session will begin around 10:10. So we hope to see you there. Rowan, thank you so much. That what I wrote down today, I was able to sort of let go of the urge to have my pen with me the whole time. But what the big one I'm taking away today is knowledge without love will not stick. But if love comes first, knowledge is sure to follow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, Erin. I just want to acknowledge Kathleen's statement, because that was supposed to be part of my presentation of having you all integrated in the school. I did share that with Erin. So please, we need to find a way to have a brainstorming with committees, that librarians are part of assemblies, are an integral part. How can we get to remember you as an important individual in the school? Thank you so much again, Erin, for having me, and Julian for everything. Each and every one of you, be the spark and have a great one. Enjoy the day. Thank you
so much, Rowan. Have a wonderful day. For everyone else, please feel free, go grab some coffee, grab some water, have a little dance, and we'll see you back here for Courtney's presentation at 10:10.